These are the top 10 worst Top Gear cars from the 70s. So basically, vehicles that tried to be bold, modern, or luxurious, but ended up being awkward, ugly, or just plain embarrassing. Let's start with General Motors and one of the most confusing design decisions it ever made. The 1978 Buick Century and Oldsmobile Cutlass Aeroback were born when GM decided Americans suddenly wanted European-style hatchbacks. Somewhere in Detroit, somebody looked at Europe and thought, yes, that, we'll make it worse. So instead of a normal sedan, buyers were given a strange sloping rear that resembled a hatchback but wasn't one. Surprise, it still had a traditional trunk lid. Now that meant that you got all the awkward looks of a hatchback with none of the usefulness. Now for their part, customers didn't get angry, they just simply didn't buy them. Sales were so bad that GM's confidence vanished almost instantly. Now amazingly, the company didn't even offer a normal sedan at first. It was fully committed to this design disaster. The only reason these cars stayed alive at all was that the wagons and coupes still looked normal enough to sell. Now next up is proof that copying luxury without understanding it, it never ends well. The 1977 Volvo 262C exists because Volvo saw the Lincoln Continental Mark IV and thought, hey, that's luxury, let's do that. This was already a bad sign. Somehow, no one stopped the project. Even worse, Volvo didn't bother making a proper clay model to see how the car would actually look. Instead, they sent perfectly good 262 GL coupes to Bertone in Italy, who chopped 2.6 inches off the roof. Now the result was a car that looked awkward, felt cramped, and punished anybody over 6 feet tall. It was meant to feel classy, but instead it looked like a luxury car wearing clothes that shrank in the wash. The proportions were all off, the roofline felt forced, and the whole thing lacked Volvo's usual honesty. And yet, somehow, around 6,500 of these things were built. That means thousands of buyers looked at it and said, you know what, this strange, uncomfortable thing feels like a good idea. Reminds me of your mother. Alright, then we got a car that proves ambition without taste can be truly dangerous. The 1977 Lida Caballero began life as a Chevrolet Chevette, which was already slow, loud, and miserable. But one man, a certain Donald Steinbach, decided that the Chevette wasn't ugly enough. His solution was to pile on hundreds of pounds of fiberglass and Bondo, attempting to give it the look of a first-generation Monte Carlo. The result was a bloated, awkward Franken-car that somehow cost almost twice as much as the original Chevette. And yeah, people actually bought these things. Nearly 100 were built, including pickup truck versions inspired by the El Camino. Now, if you think the regular one looked bad, the trucks somehow managed to look even worse. He even named the car after his wife, which feels like a risky move at best. In the end, the project collapsed and Steinbach lost money. Sometimes bad ideas do get punished. Kinda makes me wonder if he ended up getting a divorce. Anyway, crossing the Atlantic, we arrive at one of British Leyland's many legendary failures. The 1975 British Leyland Princess tried really hard to look modern, futuristic, and advanced. Now, on paper, it sounded promising. In reality, it was an awkward, wedge-shaped car that looked like a hatchback, but once again, it wasn't one. The trunk opening was tiny, making it useless for real life. The car was impractical, unattractive, and unreliable, which was pretty much the British Leyland signature at the time. The Princess was introduced during a period when BL was already struggling badly. Shortly after, the company collapsed and had to be nationalized. Was the Princess the only reason? No, of course not, but it absolutely didn't help them out one bit. Alright, now let's take a minute and talk about one of the most famous ugly cars ever created. The 1975 AMC Pacer was marketed as the first wide small car, a phrase that somehow managed to sound exciting and concerning at the same time. See, AMC believed that the massive glass area would give drivers great visibility. What it actually did was turn the cabin into a greenhouse. A lot of drivers felt like goldfish trapped in a bowl, slowly cooking under the sun. The Pacer was also heavy, underpowered, and shaped like nothing else on the road, and not in a good way. The taillights looked like they were applied with a cake frosting spatula, and just when you think it couldn't get any worse, AMC decided to make it worse. In 1978, they added a bulging hood and upright grille to fit an optional V8 engine. Yeah, a V8. In that, fuel economy was already terrible, so AMC basically gave up pretending to care. This thing was a car for dorks way before dorks ever became cool. Now if y'all thought that was bad, wait till we talk about early electric cars. Oof, the 1974 Sebring Vanguard city car, later renamed the commuter car, is one of the main reasons electric cars were mocked for decades. See, this thing looks a lot less like a car and more like a doorstop with wheels. It had a motor producing between 2.5 and 6 horsepower, which is less than some modern lawnmowers. Its top speed barely scared pedestrians, and it took more than 6 seconds just to reach 25 miles per hour. Not 60, 25. The range was about 40 miles, safety was basically ignored, and comfort wasn't even considered. Later versions added massive bumpers that somehow made the car look even more ridiculous. Driving one wasn't just unsafe, it was emotionally damaging. Every trip felt like a public apology. Maximum psychic damage. Alright, speaking of emotional damage, here comes Britain again. The 1973 Reliant Robin proves that three-wheel cars don't gotta be ugly, but somehow this one, oh, it really tried. The Robin looked desperate, like a car that knew it wasn't quite a real car. Its narrow stance and strange proportions made it famous for tipping over, especially during turns. Honestly, watching one drive hard was like watching a shopping cart fight physics. Even its predecessor, the Reliant Regal, managed to have a little bit more dignity. The Robin didn't demand respect, it begged for sympathy, and that somehow made it even worse. Alright, can't have a video without upsetting some Porsche fans. The 1970 Porsche 914 is a car a lot of people genuinely love, and honestly, I can understand why. It's fun as hell to drive, it's well engineered, and it's got a really cool mid-engine layout. But come on, visually this thing is awkward. The proportions feel strange, with a huge gap between the cabin and the rear wheels. The body is boxy, plain, and almost apologetic in nature. This thing doesn't scream excitement. It quietly accepts being weird. It's not really ugly in a loud way. It's ugly in a, this was the best compromise we can manage kind of way. A Porsche should look like a dream car. The 914 looks like the reality you wake up to and politely accept after a hard night of drinking at a bar. Alright, from Germany to Sweden, things somehow don't improve. The 1970 Saab Sonnet 3 was designed specifically to appeal to Americans, and somebody clearly misunderstood American tastes. The front end was stretched out like Pinocchio's nose, made even worse by some large safety bumpers. The long front clashed badly with the short rear, making the entire car feel unbalanced and awkward AF. This thing wasn't fast, it wasn't especially good looking, and it didn't help Saab's image in the US at all. Americans wouldn't take the company seriously until much later, and cars like this are a prime example of why. And finally, we end on a true masterclass in bad badge engineering. The 1974 Van den Plas 1500 was British Leyland at its most delusional. Underneath all the luxury pretensions, it was just an Austin Allegro, one of the worst cars of its era. But BL decided that adding a fancy chrome grille, real leather seats, thick carpets, and fold-down walnut tables would magically turn it into a luxury car. You heard me. Walnut tables. All of this nearly doubled the price. The idea was small luxury, but the result was a dressed-up disaster. It was like putting a tuxedo on a broken chair and charging extra for it. The perfect car for somebody who looked at a Jaguar and said, yeah, that's nice, but can it be smaller and worse? And looking back, the 1970s were full of bold ideas that simply didn't work out. Designers took risks, engineers made compromises, and marketing teams made promises that reality couldn't keep. Now these cars may be terrible, but without them, the automotive world and Top Gear would probably be a lot less fun to laugh at.